Karen poured soda into my disabled daughter's ventilator. Now she's facing federal charges. I wish I could forget the sound it made, that soft, sputtering hiss, like a dying breath, followed by the shrill alarm of failure. But I can't, because that machine kept my daughter alive. And Karen, she poured soda straight into it like it was garbage. My name is Amina Clark. I'm a nurse, a mother, and a quiet neighbor by most standards. My daughter Samira was born with muscular dystrophy. She's nonverbal, uses a power chair, and depends on a portable ventilator to breathe every hour of every day. We moved to Brookstone Grove, hoping for calm, after years in crowded cities and inaccessible rentals. I thought I'd found peace here, a little patch of green, a home with a ramp, a neighborhood that smiled. But then there was Karen, president of the Brookstone Beautification and Order Council, which sounds legitimate until you realize she made it up, complete with uniforms, compliance slips, and a fake website. She fined us for parking too long in our own driveway. She reported our front porch ramp as clutter. She once said to my face, "You people bring down the image of our block." But nothing, not her stares, not her passive-aggressive notes could have prepared me for what she did that afternoon. Part 1. They say you can never really know your neighbors until something breaks your fence, your peace, your trust. For me, it was my daughter's ventilator, the machine that kept her alive, the machine a woman poured soda into like it was an old soda can. We moved into 221 Juniper Trail the first week of spring. Cherry blossoms lined the sidewalks like a welcome parade, and every neighbor we passed waved except one. Karen. She stood across the street, arms crossed, lips pursed, holding a clipboard like it was a weapon. Blonde bob, khakis too tight, sunglasses that never moved. I told myself she was just curious, but that look, that wasn't curiosity. That was judgment. I didn't want to make enemies. God knows, after 3 hospital transfers, 2 rental evictions, and years of balancing nursing shifts with solo parenting, I didn't have time for drama. All I wanted was for Samira to finally have a home. Our daughter, 9 years old, dark curls always braided, eyes wide and searching, couldn't speak. But she communicated better than most adults I knew. She'd smile with her whole face, blink once for yes, twice for no. Her ventilator was slim, state-of-the-art, and sat in a secure tray on the back of her chair. We kept it charged, protected, monitored. It was her lungs. And on Monday, Karen destroyed it. It was supposed to be a peaceful walk. The sun was just setting. I pushed Samira gently along the sidewalk, pausing at each crack to make sure her chair didn't jolt. She liked watching the sky turn lavender. I always played her favorite song, Rise Up, softly through a small speaker clipped to the armrest. Karen was in her front yard, hosing off her perfectly trimmed hedge. She watched us approach. I could feel her eyes. As we rolled past, she flicked the hose toward the sidewalk. A sharp, cold splash hit my leg. I looked up, startled. She didn't even flinch. "Your child's music is disruptive," she said coldly. "This isn't a theme park." I kept my voice level. "It's very quiet. Karen, and she likes it. She doesn't even know what she likes." I stopped. My pulse kicked. Samira blinked twice. No. I turned the chair toward our home. I wasn't about to escalate. That's when it happened. A pop. Then fizzing. Then a scream my own. Karen had walked up behind us and without warning dumped a full, big gulp-sized soda directly into the back tray of Samira's chair. Where the ventilator was, sticky brown liquid flooded the vents. Sparks flew. The machine started beeping like a dying bird. Samira's eyes widened in panic, and I froze. Then training kicked in. I yanked the emergency plug. I hit the manual breathing switch. I tore the chair tray open and screamed for help. Karen just stood there. "It's just a drink," she said. "Maybe next time. Don't bring hospital equipment to a neighborhood walk." I didn't hear the rest, because I was already on the phone with 911. The paramedics came fast, faster than I thought they could. We'd flagged her medical ID as critical priority in their system after last year's respiratory collapse. Two EMTs stabilized her and attached a backup vent while I tried not to shake, tried not to sob. The third paramedic took my statement. I barely remember what I said. The words I do remember. She poured it on purpose. On her ventilator. She said it didn't belong here. He blinked. Did anyone see it? Every house on the street. I said, it's a cul-de-sac. Karen had gone inside, locked her door, pulled the shades, cowered. But the damage had already been done. Samira was safe, barely but shaken. Her machine was fried, and the model we used had a wait list, thanks to post-pandemic shortages. I sat on our porch that night, Samira asleep beside me in the backup rig, and I cried. I cried because the one place I thought I could protect her had betrayed us, and because I knew this wouldn't be treated like a crime. Not at first. Not unless I made it. The next morning, I called the police to press charges. The responding officer took notes. He seemed sympathetic until he asked, "Do you have proof she meant to damage it?" It was a direct pour. I said, "From less than 2 feet away." She said it wasn't welcome here. But that could be interpreted as recklessness, not intent. My heart sank. Intent. The magic word that separates cruelty from a crime. I'd seen this before. As a nurse, as a black woman, as a single parent of a disabled child, they always needed more proof when the victim looked like us. That afternoon, I canvassed the neighborhood, door to door, like a woman possessed. Out of 14 homes, 6 residents confirmed they saw Karen outside at the time. 3 admitted they heard a confrontation, but only when a teenage girl named Danny said what I needed to hear. I filmed it. She said, holding up her phone, "I was doing a TikTok." I got the moment she poured it. I nearly collapsed. She sent me the video. I watched it on repeat, hands shaking. There it was, clear as day. Karen walking up, drink in hand. Samira smiling gently. And then, the deliberate tip of the cup, the splash, the smoke. My scream. Karen's voice. "Maybe next time, don't bring hospital equipment to a neighborhood walk." Intent, captured, undeniable. I sent the video to the sheriff's office, to my lawyer, to every news station in the Tri-County area. And then I called the Office of Civil Rights, not just to file a complaint, to launch a federal investigation. Because under the Americans with Disabilities Act, what Karen did wasn't just a tantrum, it was sabotage of life-preserving medical equipment. It was a federal offense. The media picked it up within 36 hours. Mother claims HOA president deliberately destroyed disabled child's medical device. The headline hit harder than I expected. By the next morning, I had 20 interview requests. A senator retweeted the story. A disability rights group reached out offering legal support. And Karen, she was suddenly very quiet. But she wasn't done. Not yet. Because what I didn't know then was that she wasn't just a cruel neighbor. She was running something deeper, something official looking. And it was time to find out just how far her fake authority went. Part 2. I didn't sleep that night, not really. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the spill, the sparks. Samira's lips turning pale, her blinking, rapid and frantic. And Karen smirking, smug, like she dumped a drink on a sidewalk, not on a machine keeping a child alive. But when the national news picked it up, something shifted. This wasn't just local anymore. And now, Karen had nowhere to hide. By morning, my inbox was flooded with messages. Reporters, activists, strangers. But one email stood out. Subject line, "She did this in our neighborhood too." It was from a woman named Rhea Whitlock, a teacher in nearby Brookhaven Commons. Her message was short but urgent. I saw the story. I believe this same woman, Karen Winston, ran a so-called HOA here 2 years ago under a different name. Same clipboard, same threats. She fined me for having wind chimes on my porch. Said it violated community tranquility. When I asked for documentation, She told me to check the internal compliance registry. There was no such thing. A month later, she disappeared. But not before 3 elderly homeowners sold their properties and moved out. I called Rhea within the hour, and that's when everything changed. Rhea was calm, clear, and incredibly prepared. She had printed emails, citation letters with Karen's signature, and screenshots of a now-defunct website titled Brookhaven Residential Preservation Authority. It looked eerily familiar, nearly identical to the Brookstone Beautification and Order Council site Karen claimed to run in our neighborhood. But this one had a different logo, different zip code, same language, same violations, same woman. I sat in silence as Rhea scrolled through emails. She came across as official. She used legal terms, mandated compliance, administrative penalty. People believed her, especially the elderly. How many, I asked. Dozens, she replied. But the worst part, she created fear. Fear of losing homes, fear of embarrassment, fear of being targeted if you resisted. I knew that fear. I'd lived it. And now I knew what Karen did to Samira wasn't just personal, it was systemic. I dug deeper. Over the next 48 hours, I contacted a lawyer who'd represented a disabled couple in Cedar Row, where a Karen had fined them for a mobility ramp. A man in Silver Hills whose autistic son was nearly expelled from his school after Karen falsely reported them to CPS. A Hispanic grandmother who was told her religious shrine violated decorative neutrality and was threatened with daily penalties. All separate neighborhoods, all fake HOA letters, all signed Karen M. Winston. Sometimes she used slight variations. K. Winston, Karen W., Karen May. But the style was the same. So was the threat, and the victims were always the same: vulnerable, different, disruptive to neighborhood harmony. I called Phil, a disability rights attorney who'd reached out earlier after seeing the news. You've got a pattern, he said. What she did to your daughter, it's sabotage. But what she's done across counties, that's a scheme. It's wire fraud, it's exploitation, it's ADA violation, civil rights violation, and possibly even racketeering. I blinked. You mean like the mob? Yes, he said, because that's what this is. Targeted financial and psychological manipulation of protected citizens, and it's time someone took it apart. With Phil's help, I compiled a dossier: Karen's alias list, HOA name variants, bank account names tied to fake dues, printed citations, and now our video. We sent it to the FBI, the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, the Department of Housing and Urban Development HUD. We also CC'd every major network that had reached out. By Friday, Karen's name was trending nationally, and the word felony started appearing in headlines. I could feel the walls closing in around her. But in our neighborhood, she wasn't done. On Saturday, I found a flyer on our mailbox. Urgent community update: false accusations spread by out-of-control Mother Brookstone residents. The recent media smear campaign is the work of one disgruntled woman who seeks to destroy the harmony and decorum we've built. The disabled child is being exploited for attention. Do not speak to press. Do not feed hysteria. Brookstone Beautification and Order Council. It was unsigned, but I knew her font. I lost it. I marched straight to her house. I didn't care about optics. Not anymore. I pounded on her door so hard the brass knocker rattled loose. She opened it, half a crack. She looked pale now. No clipboard, no sunglasses, just a tired face and a flicker of fear. You hurt my daughter, I said, my voice low, steady. You tried to hurt our name. You've done it to dozens of others. But now you're the one exposed. She opened her mouth, but I cut her off. You poured soda into a ventilator. You didn't just cross a line, you set fire to it. And now you're going to face every law you thought you were above. I turned to leave, but not before I added, and by the way, your HOA doesn't exist, but the federal charges against you, they will. That night, a federal agent called me directly. He confirmed the FBI had opened an official investigation into Karen's multi-state impersonation and abuse scheme. A week later, a federal subpoena landed on her doorstep. And for the first time in our quiet cul-de-sac, Karen didn't come outside. Part 3. The day Karen Winston was federally indicted, our street was so quiet you could hear the wind chimes from 2 houses down, ironically, the same ones she'd once tried to have removed for auditory disruption. But the silence wasn't peace. It was tension, the kind that settles before a storm finally breaks. The charges were unsealed at 9:00 p.m. By 9:15, every major news outlet had the same headline: Suburban HOA president charged with federal crimes. After ventilator sabotage, Winston allegedly ran a fraudulent HOA scheme targeting disabled residents across 3 counties. She faces federal counts of medical sabotage, wire fraud, civil rights violations, and impersonation of municipal authority. I stood on the front porch with my daughter asleep inside, her backup ventilator humming like a soft shield against the world. It wasn't relief I felt. It was validation. Finally, everyone saw her for what she was. The community's response wasn't what I expected. Some neighbors came over immediately offering apologies, cookies, handmade cards. One elderly man even brought a bouquet of flowers with a shaking hand. "I didn't know," he said, eyes filled with guilt. "I just thought she was doing what was right for the neighborhood." I nodded, accepting his words. But I didn't excuse them. "You don't have to yell to do the right thing." I told him, "You just have to look closer." Others didn't say anything. They avoided eye contact, ducked back inside at the sight of reporters. Fear, shame, disbelief, they all looked the same when worn on a suburban face. But no one defended her. Not anymore. The next few days moved like fire. Karen's mugshot was released, her face bloated, eyes cold, defiant. Social media roasted her into the ground. Disability rights groups began rallying nationwide. Hashtags like Washi Justice for Samira and Wash Shut Down Fake HOAs trended across platforms. People shared their stories. Veterans fined for flagpoles. Wheelchair ramps labeled property hazards. Single moms intimidated into moving out. Suddenly, Karen wasn't just a villain. She was the villain, a symbol of everything wrong with unchecked suburban power. At home, Samira remained blissfully unaware of the chaos swirling beyond our door. But I kept her close, closer than ever. Every breath she took reminded me why I couldn't afford to let up now. Phil, our attorney, called me the following evening. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "She has over 30 fraudulent citations filed under 3 separate fake HOA names. And get this, 2 of the properties she cited, she tried to buy afterward." My heart skipped. "She created problems," I whispered, then swooped in to solve them. "Cheaper houses, easier flips. She's not just ableist," he said grimly. "She's a predator." The DOJ moved fast. By the end of the week, Karen was slapped with an extended indictment, federal disability rights violation, interference with medical equipment, financial fraud through HOA impersonation, conspiracy to extort property under false authority. She was denied bail. The judge cited a pattern of calculated abuse targeting vulnerable individuals and significant public risk if released. When that ruling came down, I didn't cheer. I sat on my porch and cried, not just because justice was starting to work, but because it had taken this much pain to even get it moving. Then came the press conference. I wasn't planning to speak, but as I stood behind the podium, Samira's image on a poster beside me, her soft smile, ventilator gleaming in the sunlight, I knew I had to say something. Not for me, not even for her, for everyone who couldn't. My daughter is 9 years old. She doesn't speak, but she breathes. She laughs. She learns. She matters. Karen Winston didn't just pour soda into a machine. She tried to erase a life she didn't understand. And that's what this is about. It's not just about one woman. It's about every system that allows people like her to decide who belongs and who's an eyesore. That ends now. Let this case be a warning. If you target the vulnerable, you won't just be exposed, you'll be prosecuted. The room exploded with applause, And for once, I didn't flinch from the attention. Karen's lawyers issued a public statement calling the charges politically motivated, and a misunderstanding escalated by online hysteria. But the court of public opinion was done listening. Sponsors pulled out of her husband's firm. 3 other fake HOA presidents in neighboring counties resigned overnight. The Brookstone Beautification and Order Council website shut down. But the real victory came quietly. On a Thursday morning, when a bill was introduced into state legislation, the Clark-Samira Act, a new law designed to criminalize impersonation of HOA or civil authority, mandate accessible pathways for all residential areas, require state registration and oversight for all HOAs and private councils, protect families of disabled individuals from targeted nuisance enforcement. I read the bill twice. Then I looked at Samira napping on the couch, her curls rising with each breath, and I whispered, "We're not just surviving anymore. We're changing the rules." Part 4. The day after the Clark-Samira Act passed the state Senate, the mayor called me personally. I was mid-laundry, Samira giggling softly from her beanbag chair as she listened to her favorite audiobook. When my phone buzzed, I almost ignored it. "Thank God I didn't. Miss Clark, I wanted to thank you. You didn't just fight for your daughter, you've changed protections for hundreds of thousands of families in this state." I was stunned. The mayor thanking me, but I didn't do it for gratitude. I did it because I was tired of watching parents like me live in fear of clipboard tyrants like Karen. The neighborhood changed after that. No one called it Brookstone Beautification and Order anymore. That fake HOA name was ripped off mailboxes and scraped off community boards like mold. The so-called compliance signs Karen had nailed to lampposts gone. In their place, something better started forming. The Brookstone Inclusion Council. It wasn't a title someone made up and enforced. It was a group of real residents elected, accountable, trained. We had bylaws, we had transparency, and most importantly, we had disabled voices at the table. I didn't ask to join. I was begged to, and I said yes. At our first meeting, Teresa, the grandmother with MS, who Karen once threatened for her slow pace, took the chair position. I served as community liaison for disability inclusion, and Samira. She came with me. We gave her a chair with her name printed on the back in vinyl. Samira Clark, future president. She loved it. The neighbors voted to install new sidewalk rails, increase ramp access to all public-facing homes, and set aside emergency fund contributions for adaptive equipment grants. We built a small garden with wide pathways, sensory textures, and a shaded bench with her name on it. And on the day we unveiled it, nearly the whole neighborhood came, even those who once looked away. But change wasn't just happening here. Across the state, other families reached out. A single father in Stonebridge whose daughter uses a feeding tube and was told he lowered property value. A black veteran who was fined for his service flag interfering with visual harmony. A mixed-race couple who were issued 7 citations for non-compliant seasonal decor, aka their Diwali lights. They had stories. They had pain. But now, they had our blueprint. So Phil and I formed something bigger. The Clark Initiative, a nonprofit dedicated to fighting HOA abuse, disability discrimination, and impersonation of civic power. We launched with 5 board members, 3 of whom had been directly impacted by Karen-style presidencies. We held webinars, taught courses, started a hotline. Our first month, 72 reports. By month 3, over 500. Karen wasn't a one-off. She was a system symptom, and we were building the vaccine. Meanwhile, now Karen sat in a federal detention center awaiting trial. She had fired 2 attorneys. Her defense crumbled under pressure, and the feds weren't pulling punches. The prosecution's list of witnesses included 10 families, 3 real estate experts, 2 forensic IT specialists, and me. But they didn't need me to take the stand, because a week before jury selection, Karen took a plea deal, 10 years in federal prison, restitution to all named victims, and permanent ban from holding any leadership or property oversight role for life. When I got the call, I didn't cheer. I just went to Samira's room held her hand, and said softly, "She's never going to hurt another child again." Samira blinked once. She understood. 6 months later, we were invited to Washington, D.C. They were forming a new national task force on ADA protection and HOA regulation. We were asked to present our story. I stood beside a congressman, an urban housing expert, and a civil rights attorney, and then they handed the mic to me. I looked out over the chamber and said, "My name is Amina Clark. My daughter uses a ventilator. A woman tried to silence her by destroying the thing that kept her alive, but what she really destroyed was her own illusion of power. My daughter doesn't speak, but the laws that now exist because of her, they'll speak for generations." The Clark-Samira Act passed nationwide that fall. With it came mandatory ID verification for all HOA enforcement, ADA compliance audits in suburban planning, federal criminal charges for sabotage of life-preserving equipment, a national HOA abuse watch list available to the public. Karen's name was the first one listed. Back in Brookstone, Samira turned 10. We threw her a party in the community garden, streamers, balloons, music she could feel vibrate through her chair. One of the neighborhood kids made her a hero crown from gold-painted cardboard. She wore it the whole day. And when the sun dipped behind the trees, I pushed her down the same sidewalk where she was attacked. Only now it was lined with lights and flowers and safety. Part 5. The first time I saw Samira's face on the cover of a national magazine, I cried so hard I dropped the issue on the grocery store floor. There she was, my little girl, cheeks soft, curls perfectly braided, ventilator tube wrapped like a ribbon across her lap, her smile lighting up the page. The headline above her read, "The Girl Who Changed the Law." We hadn't asked for fame. We hadn't chased it. But somehow, after everything Karen took from us, Samira had become a symbol of what a child's dignity is worth. It started with a single portrait. A photographer from People magazine came to Brookstone after the Clark-Samira Act passed nationwide. She asked to take pictures of Samira in her environment. I agreed on one condition. She's not a victim. I said, "You don't get to pity her." The photographer smiled. "I don't see a victim. I see a girl who brought down a system." That photo changed everything. Samira's story was added to educational materials in 3 different states under the Unit on Disability Rights. I began receiving invitations to speak at universities, parent advocacy conferences, even international panels on community equity. At first, I brought Phil, but after a few months, I realized I didn't need backup anymore because the grief had transformed into a voice, and that voice was being heard. Meanwhile, the Clark Initiative grew faster than I imagined. Within a year, we'd helped shut down 11 fake HOA operations across the U.S. We partnered with civil liberties lawyers, ADA watchdogs, and federal housing officials. We produced PSA videos, built a case-tracking dashboard, created a scholarship fund in Samira's name for students with disabilities pursuing public policy careers. We also expanded the hotline, once staffed by 3 of us in my kitchen, to a 24/7 team operating out of a dedicated office. Samira came with me to the ribbon cutting. She reached for the scissors and smiled. Her story was no longer about what was done to her. It was about what she helped create. And Karen was transferred to a federal correctional institution in Kentucky. She requested early parole after 4 years, citing emotional trauma from media vilification. It was denied. Unanimously, the judge cited her lack of remorse, the ongoing trauma faced by her victims, and the enduring societal impact of her crimes. I didn't gloat, but I did sleep easier that night. Life settled, not into silence, but into purpose. Brookstone became a hub for inclusive neighborhood reform. Our community garden was featured in Sunset magazine. A school in the next district built a fully accessible playground inspired by our design, and Samira, she became a role model. One day at a Clark Initiative fundraiser, a little girl with a cochlear implant approached her in the garden. She touched Samira's hand and said, "Because of you, I got to ride the swing this year." Samira blinked once. Yes. And in that moment, I realized something. We never healed because justice was served. We healed because we fought to make sure no one else had to beg for it. The biggest surprise came from overseas. A disability advocacy group in the UK invited us to speak at the Global Access Summit in London. Phil and I presented on local power abuse and community-based justice. When we were done, a woman from Nairobi stood up and said, "You taught me that justice isn't top-down. It's person to person, sidewalk to sidewalk." That made me cry harder than the verdict, because our fight had become a movement. Years later, long after the headlines faded, I wrote a book. It was called Breathing Room: The Story of a Mother, a Machine, and a Movement. It wasn't just about Samira's ventilator. It was about how we learned to breathe again, together, in a world that once tried to suffocate us. I still take her down that sidewalk every Sunday evening. Not because we have to, because we can. The same sidewalk where Karen poured soda onto her lifeline, now lined with tulips, lanterns, and a plaque that reads, "In honor of Samira Clark," who taught us what justice sounds like when silence is broken. If you're reading this as a parent, a neighbor, or someone who's ever felt powerless, remember, justice starts small. It starts with one voice, one breath, one refusal to be erased. Karen thought she was stronger than a child on a machine, but she forgot one thing. That child had a mother, and that mother had a cause, and that cause became a legacy. The end of Warm, Tiprintu.